My son said, "I don't want your last name anymore." The first sting didn't come from my ex-wife. It didn't come from her new husband either. It came from the boy I raised. He stood in front of me that evening, 10 years old, still small enough for me to remember holding him in my arms, but tall enough now to look me in the eyes without flinching. His words dropped like glass on a marble floor. "I don't want your last name anymore," he said. There was no hesitation, no confusion. His voice was rehearsed, borrowed from someone else's throat. He paused, then added the knife twist. "Mom's new husband says you're a loser, and I should take a real man's name." Silence bled into the room. Behind him, she stood, my ex-wife. The same woman who once swore she'd never leave me. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The smile curling at the edges of her lips said enough. Triumph. The boy's words were her weapon, sharpened and delivered with surgical precision. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask questions. I simply reached into my coat pocket, drew out a pen, and slid a folded document across the table. "Fine," I said. My voice was flat, empty. "Sign here." He signed. A messy scrawl that barely resembled his name. My name. And just like that, he let it go. The ink was still wet when I saw the faintest flicker of hesitation cross her eyes. Only for a moment. Then her smile widened. But a week later, the phone rang. It wasn't her. It was the estate lawyer. His voice trembled through the receiver, carrying both disbelief and dread. "Ma'am," he said to her, "do you realize what you just let him sign away?" I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew. The truth is, I wasn't surprised. Not by my son's words, not by her smug expression. I had seen it coming. Divorce does strange things to people. For her, it was a rebirth. She had found someone else, someone flashier, wealthier on the surface, a man who could promise her glitter instead of substance. To her, that was enough. And to prove she'd chosen well, she needed me to fail. Publicly, permanently. So she poisoned the well. She whispered into our son's ear that his father wasn't worth the name he carried, that names could be traded like jewelry, discarded when they no longer shone. Her new husband fed the lie. A real man, he called himself, a man of power, status, strength. He promised the boy more than I ever could, or so they thought. I remained silent, outwardly detached. I didn't fight her in court. I didn't retaliate in words. I let her think she had won. But beneath the silence, my mind worked like a blade on a whetstone. Every insult, every manipulation, every attempt to erase me only honed the edge sharper. Because she had forgotten one thing, one very crucial thing: the estate. For generations, my family had built a legal empire, a real estate law firm that didn't just own property, it owned the contracts that defined them. Deeds, rights, names. And in that moment, when my son pressed the pen to paper and stripped away my last name, he wasn't just letting go of me, he was letting go of everything tied to it. The firm, the inheritance, the bloodline rights embedded in ink and law. And she, in her arrogance, had smiled as it happened. I didn't react right away. That's the difference between rage and strategy. Rage burns hot and fizzles fast. Strategy? Strategy is eternal. I returned to my office that night, the city skyline burning against the glass like dying embers. The contract sat on my desk, the boy's scrawl bleeding across the line where my name should have remained. I read it once, then again, then a third time. Every detail mattered. It wasn't just a paper renouncing a name. It was an amendment of lineage, a severance of legal ties. The clause I had drafted, months before, was buried deep in the estate documents, a clause that would transfer full rights to the next bearer of the family name. By rejecting it, By signing away the name under the supervision of 2 witnesses, he had unknowingly relinquished all claims: the company shares, the trust, the properties that stretched from coast to coast, all erased with a single stroke of ink. She thought she'd cut me down. Instead, she cut herself and her son out of a fortune that spanned generations. I spent the next days in silence, my face an unreadable mask in the presence of colleagues and clients. But inside, every second ticked with dark anticipation. I instructed the estate lawyer to prepare the files, quietly, thoroughly, every document aligned like chess pieces. At night, I replayed my son's words, not with anger, not with grief, but with a cold kind of clarity. I don't want your last name anymore. Fine. Let him have another man's name. Let her beam with pride. But names in my family were more than letters. They were keys, and they had just thrown theirs into the fire. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was shrill, panicked, cracking through the receiver. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. I said nothing. I let her words unravel themselves. "The lawyer, he called me. He said the estate, he said everything is gone, that my son has no claim to your firm, no inheritance, nothing. You tricked him." Her voice broke on the last word, tricked. As if I had deceived a child. But I hadn't. I had simply offered him the truth of choice. And he, under her shadow, made it. Calmly, I spoke. He signed it. You watched. There was silence on the other end, heavy, suffocating. Then, in a whisper, she said it. "You planned this." I didn't answer, because silence was louder than confession. I pictured her face, the dawning horror, the realization that her triumph had birthed ruin, that the man she paraded as a real father had given her son nothing but a hollow name. I could almost hear the walls of her pride collapsing, and I remained still, detached, cold, because this wasn't anger, this was truth, and truth, once revealed, is irreversible. We met once more, at her request, a sterile boardroom, polished wood reflecting fluorescent light. She came armed with fury, her new husband beside her, the boy sitting quietly between them. Her eyes burned into mine. "You destroyed your own son's future." I studied her, slowly, carefully. "No," I said, my voice low, deliberate. "You destroyed it when you turned him against his own blood." Her husband shifted uncomfortably. The boy looked down at his hands, confusion flickering across his face. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the estate papers, the trust accounts, the generational records, all stamped, all sealed. "Do you see?" I asked her, not him. "Every deed, every share, every right tied to the name you told him to throw away." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder, each page slicing into her illusions. "You wanted him to have a new name," I continued. "Now he does. But it comes with nothing. No legacy, no inheritance, just a word without history." The boy finally spoke, his voice small. "Mom?" She closed the folder, her face pale, her smile gone. And I leaned back, composed, detached. "You wanted me erased," I said. "Congratulations, you succeeded. But you erased him with me." Her new husband cleared his throat, as if to speak, but the weight of the silence pressed him down. He had no defense, no claim, nothing. Only she knew the depth of what she had lost. And I simply watched. I walked out of that room without looking back. No raised voices, no desperate pleas, no reconciliation, just silence. The boy no longer carried my name, and with it, he no longer carried the weight or the protection of my legacy. One day, he would understand what she had taken from him. One day, he would see the difference between a man's name and a man's shadow. But that day would not belong to me. I had given him a choice, and he had chosen under her guidance. My part was finished. I returned to my office, overlooking the city, and placed the signed document back in its drawer. Not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that silence can cut deeper than rage. Proof that revenge can be written in ink, not blood. I poured a drink, the amber liquid catching the light like fire in glass. And I whispered, though no one could hear, "You wanted a real man's name. Now you have it." I drank. I closed the drawer, and I never thought of it again. Some legacies are destroyed by betrayal. Others are destroyed by the silence that follows.